Hi there guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're back on the Dexta as the weather's improved and I've actually got some time to get a look at the machine. So as you can see here, my first protocol today is going to be to remove this gunk here, this putty that's been smeared around the bleed screw on the injector pump. So once I get all this putty removed, I should be able to see whether the screw is stripped out or whether it's just missing the seal washer, because without having that screw I couldn't properly bleed the fuel and air through the injector pump to then get it through the lines up to the injectors. So until that's done, the tractor won't start. So there's a rusted bolt head. I'm hoping that the previous owner just didn't have an aluminium or copper washer to use, so they've just sealed it up with some putty to get the pump running again. So that bolt's actually sheared off there, and I don't suspect I've sheared that. I think that's just been what's happened and it's been left in there. So I've got the now joyous task of removing this screw and getting a new one fitted with the new seal. So that's not really what I was hoping to see, but at the end of the day it needs to be sorted, so I'm glad I'm at it now and get this bolt removed and replaced. So as you can see there now, that bolt is sheared off inside the pump, so I will have to drill that out in the centre and try and get it removed. So I'm just going to drill out the centre of this bleed screw as it's filled with putty. So I haven't quite broke through the putty there yet, but I think that might be in far enough for the removal tool to get a grip. So that's now driven in and got a grip. Let's see if we can use this ratchet tap handle to remove this screw. Oh, she's moving, and we've got diesel, so that's really good. So I've just turned the fuel tap off on the tank there, so I can't take this screw out without all the diesel draining out the system. I expect there might still be a little bit dribbles out, but I've got a tub in place there. So as you can see there, the putty that's been pushed in has actually squeezed its way right through this nut, this bolt. It's amazing that that hasn't broken off and got inside the injector pump and done any damage. But I've got a new one of these on order, so when this arrives I will get the new one installed and we can then bleed this pump how you should be able to. So if I ever run out of fuel on the road or if anything happens, I can then bleed the system on the go. Right then guys, I just want to walk you through one of the issues I've been having so far with my Dexta. This here is the original fuel petcock slash primer mechanism, and as you can see, the original handle, if there ever was a plastic knob on the end, has been smashed off or broken off over the years, so it's very difficult to turn this fuel shut off valve. So I have removed the original one, as I could easily buy a replacement from a few different suppliers. So I've now had this replacement sent out by Agriline, and I cannot fault them at all. They sent the part and I had an issue with the original part, and they happily sent out a replacement part, and the new part does seem to work slightly better, but there's definitely room for improvement. Now I don't know whether this is because of copyright and they can't copy the part exactly, but when you actually look down the bore, see if I can get the torch on and show you, when you look down the actual bore where the fuel goes there, the inlet hole for the fuel is very close to the petcock tap side, where in the original one the hole is actually, can I get this one to light up as well, a bit darker inside that one. The original hole on this one here is actually further up to this side. Just kind of get the light in. Yeah, you can just see it there. So what that means is when you're opening the petcock, you're not getting the full fuel flow through the tap. So what I have done on this one that didn't work to begin with, the threads have a little retaining slot here that's meant to have a split, like a retaining clip there that goes into the groove, and that is a stop shoulder, so when you release the valve you can't open it all the way and the valve and the tap pops out. But what's happening is it's actually not opening far enough to allow any fuel through. So if I blow through that there, it's closed. And that's just starting to weep there. But at full bore, the threads are actually halfway up the retaining slot. And this is, I've already ground some off the end of this plastic, so they were right to the end here. So my solution that I'm going to continue with is to grind the tip away to shorten the length of the tap, trying to maintain somewhat central tip and the same sort of angle that it was, which is about a 60-degree angle, so that it seals nicely against the O-ring inside the new petcock. So what I'm hoping to do is get this tap to the right length, so I'm happy that it's fully open and not sticking past this retaining clip groove with the threads here. and then once I get that sorted, it'll be a matter of a quick swap round with the one that's on the tractor, and then I know for sure I can open and shut the fuel supply fully and not have any questions of possible lack of fuel, because I've been having some issues trying to get it fired up, and I think this could be one of the possible reasons for those issues. So I'm going to go over to the grinder and just take a little bit more off this tip, and we'll come back once we get that done. Well, I'm going to just go for it, do a quick swap on this tap. It's going to piss diesel out, but just get it done quickly. There we go. So that tap's now swapped around, and hopefully we'll be able to see the damage to the tip of the old tap there. Actually looks like it's missing a O-ring, so that's not too good. Could still be in there, but it's definitely sealed. So I've just been checking this fuel tap over now. Just removed the feed from the lift pump there to see that this tap isn't getting shut off, as I wasn't convinced whether the original O-ring did come out or not, as this tap here looks to be missing one of its O-rings. So to be sure that that's not jamming up within the mechanism, we've got the tap shut off there. As you can see, there's no retaining clip in that slot yet, but there is no fuel coming out of these pipes. And then if I turn this tap now, 2 turns, we've got full flow of fuel, and I'm really pleased to say that that's definitely not going to be reducing any flow. So we're going to have all the fuel that we're going to possibly be able to get into the fuel pump before we go to the injectors. And with that fuel flow, you can see here I still have a good amount of space for the retaining clip to go in place, and the tap isn't bottomed out yet, and we've got full fuel flow. So I'm really pleased with this little mod. Make sure everything's working properly. Hopefully this could be of help to some of you guys out there that are having the same sort of issue. Right then, so now we've had this main feed pipe off, we'll have to re-bleed the system. So I'll just put a couple of pumps on the lift pump there to build some pressure up, and then crack off the first bleed screw here on the top side of the fuel filter. We're definitely getting some bubbles there. Bloody wind, so you won't be able to hear them. Well, that seems to me like the air is now out of the first bleed screw. Just try and dry everything off a bit. Keep track of where it's coming from. And crack off the higher back bleed screw there. Good amount of air in the system there. Right then guys, so this morning I'm back out on the Dexta. In the previous section of this video you would have seen I've had some struggles trying to get this to fire up after doing various little jobs to it, having the whole fuel system off. I've cleaned the fuel tank, cleaned the fuel filters, put new lift pump on, and I've inspected the injecting pump this morning to check that all the slides are moving and the cam followers are following the cam. Which they both, all three are. None of them seem to be locking up anyway. So my next protocol is to move on to the injectors themselves and remove them from the block, give them a good clean and make sure that the nozzles are actually allowing proper fuel flow out of the tip. So we have movement, which is always a bloody good sign. Obviously just being very gentle with my force here because I'm pushing off the edge of the block. Give it a little bit of pressure upwards and then work it back and forth a few times just to try and break the seal on the copper washer. And there she goes. So it's safe to say these injectors are in fact heavily gunked up, coked up with a lot of diesel build-up. So there's no surprise this didn't want to run. So I'll get these all removed, stripped down and cleaned, and then we should have a fighting chance of getting this old girl back up and running. Aye, when you look down inside the injector ports there, it's very caked up. Let's get a shot of it with the camera here. Bit of a better shot of the absolutely coked up, clogged up injector seats and ports. See the seat there, and below it where the nozzle should go is absolutely coked up to hell. So I'll be scraping out as much as I can and hoovering out with a vacuum to try and clear these ports and get this girl back up and running. Pop goes the weasel. Just a quick shot of the injector ports here, all cleaned out, and the seats all seem to be in good condition. So I can just get some fresh copper washers on there once I've cleaned the injectors or replaced the nozzles, and we'll get this back together. It's looking good. We've now got all 3 injectors removed out of the Dexta, and we've got them on the workbench here, and I'd just like to get these cleaned up. But before I really start, I thought I'd get a good video of removing some of these pieces of coke slash taurine slash diesel build-up from 40-50 years of running, and probably having no fuel filter change in that whole time. If you have watched the previous videos, you would have seen the state that the tank was in, and this machine was still in fact running, although the bloke I bought it off said that it often required easy start to get it fired up. So I suspect, looking at the state of these injectors, that's no surprise due to how dirty the ends are, as the nozzle itself is supposed to atomize the fuel when it sprays the diesel out in a fine mist, and the way these are, I suspect that the spray pattern will not be adequate, if at all, there. So I'm just picking off all this loose flaky stuff to begin with, and then once we've got the hard stuff off, we can move on to a wet clean and get some degreaser on them and try and get the whole nozzles cleaned up. So we're over at the parts washer here. I've just got 2 of the injectors here submerged in some degreaser fluid there, and this one here is the dirtiest one. So I'm going to just see how the degreaser in the brush lifts the dirt off this one while those are just sitting soaking. So far this brush seems to be doing a really good job, and the degreaser is cutting through the sooty, cokey, diesely grime that is built up around these injectors. Just let them soak while I'm doing this. Well, with any luck, these filthy injectors have been the cause of the engine not wanting to start, along with a few other things that I've hopefully now sorted. So if I can get this done, we'll get the tractor back up and running and actually get some jobs done with it this summer, hopefully. Well, that's cleaned up pretty well. Not fully done, but I'm just going to swap over and let this one soak for a minute. And then I'll go over to the next one and just get these all cleaned up. So with the injectors now cleaned off and all dried off, it's a couple of days later now, I have ordered in some replacement nozzles here from Agriline because I wasn't happy with the condition of 2 of the 3 injector nozzles. So while I'm in here, I've got to put new copper washers on and put new nozzles on to make sure that the fuel is getting through the injectors as it should be, because it's the last piece of the puzzle and I feel like we might as well get it done. So let's get these stripped down and the new nozzles installed. So unpack these brand new nozzles here. They are sealed inside plastic to keep debris off. So these injectors have 2 locating pin holes here, so you can only install them the correct way. You just have to line those pins up, make sure the needle goes into the hole in the center there, and then you can reinstall your top cap, obviously once it's been cleaned. Just give it a little wiggle to make sure it's seated properly. And that's just finger tight for now, and I'm going to do all 3 of these and then I'll tighten them up properly. So I've just got the second injector here clamped up in the vise, just very gently, just to hold it so I can get the big adjustable wrench here and crack open the top to clean out the spring. There she goes. And I'm just going to remove all the parts of the injector, strip it down completely and give them all a good clean, and then reassemble and put the new nozzle on. So I'll just get this spring removed here and empty out the remaining parts washing fluid that's now sitting on the top of this injector still. There's a bit of a close-up of that second injector. Now I've managed to remove the nozzle. As you can see, the ends are definitely heavily tarred and need a good clean. The bore is still clear, but that amount of build-up will not have been allowing the injector to perform properly. So that needle float valve there was a little bit gummy and didn't want to lift to begin with, although I can move it now. So as you would have seen there in the last couple of videos, I've now got all these injectors cracked open, ready to be cleaned, and the new nozzles installed. These are heavily tarred, heavily built up with crap, so it'll do them the world of good to get cleaned and rebuilt. So I just wanted to give a bit of a close-up of some of these old injectors here. The nozzles, as you can see, they are pitted and the combustion has worn away the shape of the injector body, and the actual pin, the needle valve, it is very sticky and there is grit and grime within there, and it's not traveling freely. You can feel it binding. That's one of them. They're all pretty bad. That one there is even worse. I really am struggling to get a grip of that to pull it out, and then it's binding. Here we have all the parts for the injectors back on the workbench, all cleaned up and ready to reassemble. Just going through assembling the top caps, putting the new nozzles on, and installing the mechanical spring back to the original tension that it was. So to get a good hold of these injectors, you can see there I've just used some M12 square washers just to take the load over the threads and onto the shoulder face. So with these injectors now cleaned up and new nozzles installed, I've got new copper washers to go on and create the seal. So get these all installed. Make sure these seats are nice and clean before the washers go in. Good morning, how are you doing? I'm going to be standing in the way. So I've now got the diesel return lines installed here on top of all the injectors with new copper washers on both sides and on the bottom of the injectors themselves. Now before I connect this return line, I'm going to be installing this heater plug system from Agriline, which has a more modern heater plug that has a direct fuel system feed into the rear of it rather than having to manually prime the system with this button. That there is what the heater plug looks like, and it has an input for fuel on the rear and 12 volts positive to it there. So once the coil heats up to temperature, it opens up the thermocoupling and allows diesel to flow through and create a flame, basically like an onboard kind of easy start. Right, so I've now got this thermocoupling kit installed, and as you can see here, I've run all the new pipe work to feed from the injector overflow into the auxiliary fuel tank, which then can drain out from the fuel tank to the heater coil, and when this tank is full it will track back up this pipe and return into the tank as it did originally. So I'm pretty pleased with how I've managed to get this positioned. Didn't have to drill anything, I've just used an original fixing here for the air filter, and that whole mechanism is tucked in enough that it's not going to interfere with the throttle mechanism. The only thing left to do now is put a blank on this original fuel feed point here in the air intake manifold, and do away with the old feed line from the petcock on the tank, as there is a new petcock with this kit, but I'm still undecided whether I'm going to swap it out or not. Most likely will. So I've just got set up here for draining out the tank again. It's only got about 15 litres in or so it shouldn't be too bad. Just drain this into the new jerry can here. Got the funnel suspended in place, and I'm just going to open up the petcock and allow it to just drain out from there. Then I need to loosen the tank, just loosen the 4 bolts off so it can wiggle around, and hopefully be able to unscrew that old petcock. And well, it's not that old, that old style of petcock, and replace it with the new one that doesn't have the primer button on, so it's narrower, so I should be able to reinstall the new one without having to remove the tank too much, if I can get this old one off without having to remove the dash. That's my plan anyway. Right then guys, so my bloody phone died when I was in the middle of removing this petcock here, so I haven't managed to capture any of the action. But to achieve this task I had to remove the dash, pull it back a little to gain access to the front bolt there, and the back bolt there, and the front two there. Once they're loose and removed, the tank has just enough wiggle room to remove the old style primer petcock, and then the new one is a lot narrower, so it installs a lot easier than removal of the old one. And as you can see here, I've just used the original line and just straightened it out a bit and managed to connect it up to the original line, as this line here from the tank petcock to the lift pump is a wider diameter than the injector overflow pipe work that I've just been working on. So that's the next piece of the puzzle finally sorted, and I'm in a position where I can now put the diesel back in the tank for the 3rd time here and try and give it a start. Hopefully we'll have some success this time. So I've now got the fuel tank refilled with a bit of diesel. Just put 5 litres back into it for the moment, and for the 4th or 5th time now I'm going to bleed through the fuel filter and make sure there's no air in it. As you can see, big split there. I mean, it's flowing pretty much neat diesel there now, but there is the odd little bubble. Just soak that up. Got a couple of rags beneath it. So I'm pretty pleased that the bulk of the air is now probably pushed through the system. I'm going to just reinstall this bleed screw with a fresh copper washer and just give it one last squeeze to get any bubbles pushed out, and then move on to the rear bleed screw. Gonna put a new copper washer on this rear bleed screw as well. So let's try this new thermostat system. Put some power to the coil, see if we start to get a bit of smoke out the exhaust there. Well, I'm not getting any smoke yet, but that's been 50 seconds there, so I'm going to give it a try. So with that injector being a failure, I'm going to have to go ahead and order in a reconditioned unit, which I was hoping to avoid, but there's some internal parts that I just can't source and I can't really make them up myself. So with that, I'm going to have to call it for this video, and thank you all for watching, and hopefully in the next episode we'll have a little bit of more success and actually get the machine up and running. Cheers guys, catch you in the next one.